This is Arnold Forster in Jerusalem for Dateline Israel. Dateline Israel is sponsored by the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith. Its purpose is to bring better understanding to the American people by probing in depth everything that happens here. We talk to bus drivers, university professors, storekeepers, Arabs, Christians, and Jews. We talk to prime ministers and government people of every manner and sort. Israel has now passed its 25th birthday. We're trying to find out what it means to Jews here, to Jews across the world, and to the people of the world. This afternoon, we have the pleasure of talking to the Prime Minister of Israel, Mrs. Golda Meir. Madam Prime Minister, did you dream when you came 50 years ago that you would live to see the state of Israel?
There are no boundaries for dreams, but if you tell me that I could have said 50 years ago that I'm absolutely certain that I would live to see a state, that I think I wouldn't have done. That I knew that someday there will be a state of Israel, an independent Jewish state, there's no doubt about that, but that it would happen in my lifetime, I don't think I could have said definitely that it would be so.
Why do so many Jews, from wherever they come, the moment they arrive, feel, I'm home?
Because they feel that this is home. Because they feel that being Jewish, this is the acme of self-expression. It doesn't necessarily have to be because they come from a country where Jews are persecuted or Jews are limited. They can come from the most liberal and most democratic country where the Jews are treated as equals. But wherever a Jew is, he naturally has to live according to the majority among whom he lives, as far as language, culture, and so far as concerned.
What has the reestablishment of Israel meant to the Jews of the world? What's it done for them?
I think it has given them, first, more consciousness of their Jewishness, which naturally and absolutely is not in contradiction to their being let's say, good citizens or loyal to the countries in which they live, and so on. But there's no contradiction between that. But they are Jews, and there's a connection of history and culture and religion, and it makes them more conscious of that because of the concentration of all that in Israel. And two, maybe some of them have never known too much about Jewish history, Jewish past, Jewish culture. This has awakened in them a desire to know more about themselves as Jews.
Israel is a small country with limited resources. Why are the Israelis committed and so willing to undertake the burden of unlimited immigration?
Because that's what this is all about. We haven't created something for any number of Jews that happen to be here at any given time. When the state was established, we were only about 650,000 Jews. It would have been absolutely ridiculous if we would have thought that for that number of Jews we needed a state.
Can you see a limitation on the number of Jews
Never.
in the state of Israel?
Never.
Does Israel regard itself as having any special role in the family of nations?
No, I don't think that we have to be something for the nations of the world. We have to be a Jewish state. Now, when I say a Jewish state, I don't mean that no others can live among us. God forbid. We have a minority of non-Jews now of about 13, 14%. And always room for people who are not Jewish. But when I say a Jewish state, I mean that vast majority is Jewish, that this is where Jewish culture, the Hebrew language, principles of Judaism are carried out and implemented. And for ourselves, I would want this to be a model state in many ways. It would, in the form of society and in justice in the country, and not too great differences between various groups in society of Israel. I like to picture a society where there is, where each one really has equal opportunities, and more than equal opportunities, that those that come to us and have been, because of the societies in which they have lived, for instance, in backward states, in underdeveloped countries where they've suffered of discrimination, have been held back, that equal opportunities for them is not enough. They have to be given greater opportunities in order to reach a certain cultural level or educational level. I would like a society where it's good to live in for everybody. Not because we want to be a model for other countries, for ourselves, so that within what is called the family of nations, we would be a member of that family, that nobody would be ashamed of us.
Has Israel's presence on earth added a sense of spirituality to the world?
I say again, I don't think that we have the duty, nor should we have the audacity to say we have something within us that is to be a model for everybody else, and from here something will go out for the rest of the world. Maybe there are some that think that way. I don't. I say that we have to try hard to build our state and build our society, which we think is good. If others also think it's good, if others think that there are some elements in our life which is good also for them, we'll be very happy. But I don't think we have, the state was not created, to my conviction, to be a model for others, to be a spiritual leader for others. I am very happy if there is enough of spirituality for ourselves. If others like it, so much the better.
What difference does it make to the world whether Israel exists or not?
I think decent people in the world should make a difference to them, whether a people, not only Israel, and the African people, a people that is a people, has suffered throughout centuries because they have not had their sovereignty. It should make a difference to any people whether we exist or not only to ourselves, primarily to Jews, and primarily to the people who are in Israel. And I think all decent people in the world, why shouldn't it make any difference to them? Would it make any difference to people in the world if any European country does not exist? What do you mean that we don't exist? That somebody destroys us? Well, in the same way as no decent person in the world would want a European country destroyed, a Latin American country destroyed, a African country destroyed, an Asian country destroyed. Why should they be indifferent if Israel is destroyed? If any Arab country is destroyed?
In other words, Mrs. Meir, you want Israel to be a state like all other nations in the world?
No. I mean, in that sense, that all nations in the world are not, I don't know whether all people in the world, in all states, are all happy with everything that they have or that they have created. But I would like to be a very good state, I mean, a society. I'm not speaking now safe, naturally. all states and all nations want to be safe and security and so on. I'm speaking now about the internal existence of the state. I'm speaking about society. There are societies in some states that I would not like to be like them. I would like to create for ourselves a society of everything that we have dreamt of, because all those that have been Zionists have included the elements of their Zionism, to my mind. It was not merely to bring Jews from one place to another. It was not merely a change of a geographical change. It always included also social justice. For instance, when Herzl wrote his book of a Jewish state, he included something like an 8-hour day. This was one of the basic elements of social justice in the state, of the building of a society, of a Jewish society here. We say a Jewish society, there are many things of the basic elements of social justice has been preached by our prophets. And a Jewish state should have a lot in that. So that I don't say like every other state. I want to be considered in the right of existence of Israel like every other state. But in the internal society that we want to build, I'd like to have a society that matches the best of what there is. If we can do a little better, so much the better.
Has Israel's presence for a quarter of a century changed anti-Semitism anywhere in the world?
Well, this is probably my great disappointment. I believed that when there will be a Jewish state, anti-Semitism will automatically disappear. To my sorrow, that didn't happen. There is anti-Semitism in the world. Some places very evident and very brutal. In other places, less. But at any rate, anti-Semitism did not disappear.
It's made no fundamental difference in the feelings of Christians toward Jews.
No, that I wouldn't say. That I wouldn't say. For instance, back in '57, being the Minister of Foreign Affairs at that time, I was entertained in some country by a foreign minister, and he said to me, look, I don't understand. Jews were never known as outstanding farmers or as soldiers. What happened? This was after the Sinai campaign. What happened to you people? He said, here in my country, we have a team of farmers from Israel. They've done wonderful things in my country for my people. And now you have won this war in several hours practically. You've done something which is held up as an example of for what your army is. I said, yes. It's because wherever we were, we really had no natural roots. We grew, and sometimes hope that we have contributed something wherever we were, as all people wherever they were contribute. But as far as you have a plant, you can take it out of its natural environment and replant it somewhere else, and it will grow, maybe even give fruit. But it will not be the same as where it came from. And you go back to the country which naturally grows this plant with full roots and accustomed to the climate and so on, it develops differently. And so this is what happened to us. Coming back to our land, and once upon a time we were farmers, we go back to the soil, and then we become good at it.
Have the Israelis changed as a people over the last 25 years?
It's not 25 years, really. We don't, it isn't correct to begin our existence here on the 14th of May, 1948. First place, there were always Jews here. Throughout the 2,000 years that, since our dispersion, this country was never entirely free of Jews, naturally, very few. And over again, there were attempts to come back. But in the 80s of the last century, there was a more organized attempt to come here. And at the beginning of the 20th century, with the second Aliyah, it was more evident, and so it went on. So that what we have here, the state didn't come into existence in 48, because in 47, November 29th, 47, the United Nations declared that there should be a Jewish state. They would never have declared it if all the elements of a state had already been created, if the basis, if the foundation for that hadn't been created. And that was created for many, many decades. Now, of course, we had the historical rights, but the United Nations would have never decided that if it were only for historical right. It was taken into consideration. But the fact that the foundation was already here, and because the Second War highlighted what happens to a people that have no place in the world to which they can come to as of absolute right. I'm convinced, for instance, that if during the Holocaust, if during the Second World War, during the Nazi regime, if there had been a Jewish state at that time, I don't say that we could have saved all of the 6 million Jews. But there's no doubt whatsoever in my mind that many of them would have been saved, because during the darkest hours of that period, we were dependent upon the number of certificates that we got from another power as to how many Jews we can bring into the country. If the doors of Israel had been open as it is today, many of those that are not here anymore would have been alive. Many of those children that were sent to the gas chambers would have been alive. We would have brought them here.
You had a singular experience in Moscow when you first visited its great synagogue as Israel's ambassador. Your visit reawakened Soviet Jewish identity. What will that finally mean in the destiny of Soviet Jewry?
Here's a very concrete example of what the being of a Jewish state means for Jews. Supposing there wouldn't be a Jewish state, they say there are 3 million, 3.5 million, some say even 4 million Jews in Russia. Nobody really knows. Many of them, and don't forget, this is the some third generation of Jews after the Bolshevik Revolution, where for decades these Jews were cut off from contact with any other Jewish group, and certainly with us here before the state. The study of Hebrew is prohibited. It's a crime. Zionism is certainly a crime. And this would have gone on with forced assimilation, although Jews are supposed to become non-Jews as far as their religion is concerned, as far as their history is concerned. You can't teach history as far as the Hebrew language is concerned. But having become non-Jews, does not mean that they're really non-Jews as far as the government is concerned, because on every Jewish identity card, it says so that he's a Jew. Therefore, this is the situation of Jews in the Soviet Union. They're not to develop anything of their Jewishness. But as far as their government is concerned, they're Jews. So in that kind of atmosphere, in this double kind of existence, they would go on living until I don't know what would have become of them. With the establishment of the Jewish state, those that remembered their Jewishness and those that knew very little of it, all of a sudden became conscious that they're Jews and that they are not entirely dependent, that their fate is not decided only and entirely by the Soviet Union. Something has happened. There is a Jewish state with which they can identify themselves, to which they can go and be equal in every way. And an end to this schizophrenia that as far as the government is concerned, they're Jews, as far as really being Jews, the contents of their Jewishness, the essence of their Jewishness, that they are not allowed to develop. And this is the result. It took years. What's happening now in the Soviet Union is something I think that nobody really has yet grasped, that young people, some of them that really didn't know that they were Jews anymore, because their parents tried to hide it from them. Maybe life will be easier for them if they will not know that they're Jews, if it will not be known that they're Jews. All of a sudden they have come aware of their Jewishness and the heroism with which they fight for the right. They don't fight against the regime. All they want, their struggle is for their right to come and be themselves in a Jewish state, since they are Jews. This couldn't have happened. It would have been impossible. They couldn't have done that in the same way as struggle to go to Canada or to go to France, because that would mean that they want a different regime instead of the Bolshevik regime. They're going to another country. But when they struggle to come to Israel, it's not because they're struggling against the Bolshevik regime, the communist regime. They are a struggle for their self-identity and their self-expression as Jews. And what they do is something I think that nobody could have dreamt of a possibility of something like that happening there. And they come here, but they're not the only ones. This is the only place that they can come to this self-expression. What about Jews that are in Arab countries, in Muslim countries? For instance, the small group of Jews, most of them have come here. Hundreds of thousands of them. The few thousand, for instance, that are left in Syria are not only discriminated against, but the most brutal way in which they are treated. In a ghetto, not allowed to come out of the ghetto, not allowed anybody to buy anything from them. And all these few thousand want is merely to get out and to come here. The only reason that they, despite the situation in which they are, despite the treatment, for instance, of the Syrian government, or the Iraqi government, where there are really only a few hundred Jews left, and still some are put in prison, the same in Syria. The only reason that they can go on and not give up is because there is an Israel, for which they hope eventually they will come here.
We know, Mrs. Meir, what has happened in the last 25 years. What will happen in the next 25?
You know, when somebody asks me a question of this kind, I think there's no limit to my dreams for 25 years, because nobody will say to me 25 years from now, 25 years ago you said this will happen, but it didn't happen. I just won't be here. I hope that one thing naturally comes to one mind. First, that there will be no problems of security for Israel. That we will live in peace with our neighbors, or rather that our neighbors would live in peace with us, not merely formal peace treaties, but really this will be a region of cooperation between the countries. Great development in the entire region, to which Israel, here I can say in all modesty that Israel can contribute and is anxious to contribute. And we'll be millions of Jews here with a fine, decent society, good culture. I hope we will live not only in an area, in a region of peace, we will live in a world that knows no more wars.
And then Israel's final destiny?
Final destiny of millions of Jews here with participating in all the good things that all decent nations of the world participate. I'm convinced that 25 years from now, wars will be something of the past. There'll be more cooperation among peoples of the world. The scientific developments will go on and bring people closer together. It'll be more a community of nations, not with anybody foregoing its specific identity, but people will grow closer together. I hope that the disparity between nations in the world, of the haves and have-nots, of black Africa, that will disappear. There'll be more equality among not only individuals in each society of each people, but more equality and more cooperation between peoples of the world. All the good things that one can just go on dreaming.
Thank you, Madam Prime Minister.
Thank you.